The question was, what do you think the long-term effects of social media in general are? And unfortunately, what happened was, I think it's easy to characterize what I said just as a Facebook-specific thing because I worked there and I was a key part of growing it. The reality of what I was...
Explain what you said at the time
So
about
what I said
Facebook.
was, I think the tools that have been created today are starting to erode the social fabric of how society works. And what I meant by that is the following thing. Today, we live in a world now where it is easy to confuse truth and popularity. And you can use money to amplify whatever you believe and get people to believe that what is popular is now truthful and what is not popular may not be truthful. Joe and I, for example, we've been on the other side of climate for a long time, right? And the reality is now I can take money and I can use that through all of these social media systems that exist to hundreds of millions of people, and I can convince all of Joe's friends and everybody like him of my opinion in very subtle and small ways. And he can do the same to me. We can do that about vaccines. We can do that about gay rights. We can do that about bathroom laws. We can do that about Roy Moore. And so I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we live in a world where this is now possible? And
so it was about that, but just so I understand, was it because I read and watched parts of what you were talking about. Part of it seemed to me about the ability to pay to manipulate people's thoughts. The other seemed to me to be this sort of ADD society with which the sort of liking and everything else has created this sort of feedback loop that you compared to drugs.
We know for a fact that what all of these systems do, every single one, is it exploits our own natural tendencies in human beings to get and want feedback. And that feedback, chemically speaking, is the release of dopamine in your brain. And so what these feedback loops do, and they exist everywhere, in Call of Duty, in other video games, in social networking sites, they get you to react. And I think that if you get too desensitized and you need it over and over and over again, then you become actually detached from the world in which you live.
You become callous, you become crude.
And you live in front of your screen.
But Chamath, let me ask you this, because the thing that I've been so concerned about is Facebook just announcing that you're going to be having some app that you can use when you're 7 to 13. I mean, it's one thing for us to be doing this, but to be hooking your kids on something that you're describing as a dopamine fix at that age, that's crazy.
So look, I think in the case of Facebook specifically, I think they have probably done more than any other company, quite honestly, to try to fix it because of all of the companies, and I've seen them all up close. They're the most, frankly, to be very blunt and honest, the best run and the most technically sophisticated.
But they're also emailing me if I haven't logged onto Facebook for a while saying, hey, did you see the post from so-and-so? Did you see the post from so-and-so? Trying to lure you back in. And again, we can make those decisions as adults, but as children, that is a different...
Well, I think the product, and I don't know it quite honestly in as much detail as I should, but I think the way that that product works, because of privacy laws in the United States, you actually have to get parental permission. The point, though, is, and what you're bringing up is, I think, is the most important thing. We all have never taken a step back and actually asked ourselves, how should we be interacting with these things now, 7 years into it? And what should we be expecting of the internet at large? Look, the reality may be the entire business model of the internet may be fundamentally somewhat broken, right? Because we allow ourselves to get interacted with in ways where we don't necessarily control the medium or the messenger.
And we are not putting up any barriers to ever give yourself any downtime for that either.
Exactly. And so it may mean that we all collectively need to figure out, not just individuals, but also the companies, also governments, quite honestly, how different business models need to exist so that we can actually divorce ourselves from how this stuff is working.
So what goes on in the Palihapitiya household?
There is no screen time whatsoever.
What?
None?
None.
So forget about, let's not even talk, your Facebook is not just off limits. You're talking no iPads?
None.
None. How old are the kids?
That's it. I have 3, 8, 9, 7, and 5.
And do they ask?
Oh, all the time, because their friends have it all the time.
Movies?
A little bit, if we have to.
But no computers at all?
You know, here's the life that I live with my children, which may not be for everyone. I said I don't like this codependency of they need to rely on me, and when they can't, I feed them a device because that becomes a babysitter. You go figure it out. Go outside, skin your knee, fall on the ground, play a sport, lose at something, and then come back to me and we can talk about it. And we'll talk about it as rational human beings, and I'll try to tell you why that's a good thing that just happened to you. Versus, here you are, I'm in a baby because I have something else to do. And so we've made these conscious choices. I've made these conscious choices, but they're conscious. And what I was trying to get across, and I could have done it more articulately, is it needs to be more of a conscious choice. I'll give you a different example. Adam Bain, who you know and love, he and I go to the Knicks game. And you would think that it's amazing. We're sitting courtside, it's fantastic. I took a picture, he took a picture. We sweated the filter for 15 minutes trying to figure out which photo. And I thought, if Adam Bain and I are stuck trying to figure out what photo filter we're going to use because we're so craving the reaction, what must everybody else be going through? And aren't other people feeling this void that I'm feeling in this moment? So I'm just, I try to articulate a sensation.
In the meantime, you're not watching the game. You're not paying attention to what's going on.
It's just a really weird place. So I was just trying to articulate
What kind of reaction? Does Mark Zuckerberg call you? Who calls you in the Valley after you make a comment like this?
Let's just say a lot of people called and texted. Here's what I would say. I owe those guys everything. They made me. I mean, I'm sitting in this seat because, frankly, I was able to be a part of a company that did something really wonderful, and they're gonna do more to fix this stuff than anybody else. So I feel bad that guys there may feel like I didn't do right by them in what I said, but it was not directed at Facebook. I was really just trying to talk about something societally, and I agree with you, Joe. I'm not gonna backtrack on what I said because at some core basic level, we have to start talking about this stuff. How should our kids, why is anxiety and depression amongst our teenagers higher than they've ever been?
Yes, it's a
in a world that
issue.
is safer, in a world that's more constructive, in a world where you should have access to everything, what is going on? And we just have to figure this out and talk about it.
When will you let your 9-year-old actually have a screen?
He can get a job. I worked at Burger King when I was 14. When he gets a job and earns enough money to buy his phone, he can do whatever he wants with it. Up until then, I'm going to feed him, clothe him, and house him, and send him to school, and that's all I'm going to do.
I mean, I feel you yourself don't feel the urge to always check your a screen, or you do?
I check my screen a lot at the office.
He's got the phone right there.
And
I know, but what
even
about
now,
home?
I've actually morphed my behavior. What I do now is, like, whenever I even come into the office, typically, I actually put it face down. Because otherwise I feel all these notifications. I'm constantly, my email notifications, stock alerts, etc.
Well, you can turn those off. I don't have those on.
This is a pervasive trend that's...
But I feel it. And I remember the other day where I forgot my phone and I was in a line somewhere. And it was a signal from my unconscious just about every 2 minutes that I felt. It was like...
By the way, do you ever feel the panic phantom pain of wherever you keep your phone?
Yep.
Or where you feel like maybe a text just, yeah.
So this is clearly
And for
something
kids,
that's
that's
new.
even-
Have you talked to Sean Parker about this? Because he made
haven't
some
talked to
comments
Parker.
that were similar just 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Well, this is why I thought, what I said a month ago really, it was me kind of just saying what at the time I was thinking through, and then it was a month later now this whole thing has kind of gone crazy.
You know what? It probably is chemically mediated. I mean, in my brain, whatever gets me to all of a sudden feel that need to do something.
It's true for video games. It's true for television. It's true for other forms of. It's true for music. So it's probably true for your phone.